Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday night segment of The Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live here via the International Public Radio here on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM and 105.3 FM from the beautiful city of New Orleans. This evening's segment is fully sponsored by the amazing folks over at Folgers Coffee. So thank you, Folgers. Nobody loves you more than us chicks at the Outer Realm. Tonight we will welcome Cheryl Costa to the show, and she will be discussing UFO disclosure and her work on UFO analysis and statistics. Wow, sounds like a whole mouthful of stuff. In order to participate in tonight's show, you will have to head over to YouTube on either the International Public Radio or UFO Paranormal Radio Network. Subscribe, please. And note that we will also be airing on all of the multiple network Facebook pages, Twitch, Twitter. So there's probably 8 different video platforms there for you guys to engage in. However, we can only engage directly if you go to the UFO Paranormal Radio YouTube page. And please tag Amelia if you need a response. Otherwise, no, we can see everything. And even though we don't necessarily, comment on it right away, we do our best to address everything. Also, I'm going to hear me start saying this often. Please note that we are up for a podcast People's Choice Award. So if you can head over to podcastawards.com and find us at the Outer Realm under the social category, because we are social and we bring the world to you. Kindly cast your vote, hopefully for us. And while you're there, check out our peers also from the network who are also up for an award. Writers and Illustrators of the Future podcast will be under Education, Storyteller, and Drama categories. The Centralist under the News category, Chasing Prophecy, Spirituality, and Religion. And of course, The Amazing Science and Beyond under the Science category. So there's a whole array of things. Go on over, show the network some love. And in the meantime, sit tight for a fantastic show. I can breathe.
That was a mouthful.
It was.
That was a mouthful, and a very, very special thank you to Folgers tonight.
Yes, absolutely. So I know we're running a little bit behind here. So do you want to?
Sorry, I'm all excited because we're fully sponsored now.
I know, it's so very exciting. Yes. Yay, they love us. We love them. Match made in heaven. Love affair with Folgers Coffee. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. Tonight, Cheryl Costa is here with us, and Cheryl and Linda Costa are the mothers of UFO statistics, which is really cool. If you didn't know this, which I didn't, I'm learning so much right now with Disclosure Month. From 2001 through 2020, Americans filed 167,632 UFO sighting reports. That's just USA. The United States averages about 8,382 per year, about 698 per month, 161 per week, and about 23 sighting reports per day. These ladies know their stuff. In their most recent book, wasn't that crazy? And I've never seen one, like I wish. In their most recent book, UFO Sightings Desk Reference, United States of America, 2001 to 2020. That's a long span. That's a lot of research. Cheryl and Linda Costa have compiled and analyzed 20 years worth of UFO sightings reports and have produced very informative analysis, charts, graphs, and tables for the USA and its individual states. In addition, they have evaluated the yearly, monthly, and hourly aspects of all 33 known UFO shapes. 33. Who knew? 33. Wow.
I have a feeling we are going to be versed quite well by the time this show is
My
finished.
gosh,
So
right?
we
Wow.
know that this network is huge into UFO talk. So that's going to be, the thing. And of course, with this, preliminary disclosure, that's also been, a hotbed of conversation everywhere, but especially on this network. So once she chimes in, we'll see if Joe can bring her forward and get the ball rolling, sort of thing. So, yeah.
Yes.
Hello.
Hi. How are you, Cheryl?
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you? I'm so happy to see you.
Good to see you both.
On our show.
Thank you.
Because I've been watching you everywhere else. I'm like, yes, what you told me.
Oh my goodness.
This is very exciting. Just reading reading over the flyer to everyone that we have. I had no bloody idea that there were so many reports out there. I mean, I myself I've never reported it, and we see them pretty regularly.
A lot of
I was
people-
feeling real special, but not so much anymore.
You know, a lot of there was a poll back. I didn't know, and the mystery in the UFO community, and I really started paying attention to it when I started doing a newspaper column back in 2013. And the wisdom in the UFO community had been, 1 in 10 people reports what they see. Well, the number didn't jive. Okay, it didn't jive when I started cranking numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So then some smart people came back and said, well, 1 in 10 sees it, and then 1 in 10 of them reports what they see. And I said, that still doesn't, when I was cranking the numbers, it still didn't add up.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I sat on it a while. And then in 2017, Fox Pictures did a poll. And they said 16% say they had seen a UFO. Again, that number by itself for adult Americans did not add up either. So I put that metric aside, but it's a measurable metric because it was done by a polling agency. And then in September of 2019, the Gallup poll people came back with that 16% number, 16% and change. Okay.
Right.
And so I started working the numbers a couple of different ways. And what I came up with, and it varies from state to state, but generally the bell curve of it for the United States is one person in somewhere between 250 and 300 people reports what they see. Now, I say that range because when you're looking at the bell curve, it's a little flaky up on top where you measure it. Okay.
Right.
But if you go to each individual state and run their adult population, and I use census numbers, I did every state.
Wow.
Some states it was as little as 1 in 150 people, and in other states it was 1 in 400 people. But the bulk of it came up that little bell curve thing, Right. And so 200 people. So if you got a calculator in front of you, how many sightings are there really out there? 250 times 167,632 sightings in the last 20 years.
Hell of a lot of sightings.
Wow. I had to look at
millions.
those numbers 3
We're talking
times, though,
millions.
Cheryl. Like 3 times. I'm like, am I reading this right? Am I reading this right? I really had to. I didn't realize.
It's about 8,000 a year.
That's a lot.
Between both between both national databases and such, but it goes up and down on about a 6 to 7 year cycle. In fact, people, when we generated our first book back in 2017, people said to me, Cheryl, why didn't you go back 40 years?
Right.
So when we did this book, Linda and I specialize in the 21st century. 21st century. Yeah, you see that. Okay, I put that in the briefing.
Yeah, I've got. Yes, thank you. I don't think they can see it, but if they're on big screen at home, it's backwards from my side, so it's a little weird.
No,
if they're
but
on big screen at home, they'll be able to see that.
Okay, what the deal on that was, the first chart on top, that is the the period from 1960 to 2000. Looks like a lot of sightings, but when you put it against the sightings from 2001 to 2020, you see that tiny little bit of stuff there in front of the second chart. Yep. That's how small it was. It was less than 600 sightings a year total.
Wow.
And
reported though, right?
Reported.
Yes.
And there's an issue driving that. But as soon as we got to 2001, suddenly the numbers were about 4,500 a year between both databases.
That's
okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know what drives that? Those first 5 years, people were saying, well, why is it going up like that? And I said, I'm a retired IT specialist.
There we go. Don't mess with me.
You're
I know
brilliant.
what's going on.
You're
Okay.
brilliant.
And this wasn't my field. This part of it, I was in computer security. I was a professional hacker, but
Nice.
an investigator and all that kind of thing.
Oh,
lots
we
of it
love
there,
you when
yeah.
we're searching for missing children. I'm just saying.
I was the proverbial cyber cop.
We love you.
It was funny when you tried to recruit people for those jobs back in the 90s.
No.
Nobody would. Oh, we can't. Oh, that security. Oh, that's a White Sox job. Oh, no. And it wasn't until so the people in our department, we had degrees in education, English, zoology. Mine was in playwriting. For God's sakes. And but 9/11 occurred. Suddenly, all these people were experts in doing it, and all of us who had been working in the field diligently for 20 years got thrown out.
Yeah.
Oh, I would imagine the FBI just went nuts searching for people after that, because some of their best hackers are people they've actually charged with the crime.
Yeah.
But they're fantastic at their jobs, right?
Well, amazingly enough, I had one case where I was handed this case and it just looked like it was coming from some high school out in Michigan. Somebody tried to get into our company.
Yeah.
And I got digging deeper, and every time I turned over a stone, there was another can of worms. And I tracked it back to half a dozen hacker sites at professional organizations in Eastern Bloc countries, including the former Soviet Union. And so, wait a minute, they set up a nest in the server at that particular Michigan high school, and they were making it look like it was a local American hacker, a bunch of high school kids, that type of thing. It was actually happening by a major actor country. And so at that point, we got together with the FBI. I said, guys, would you like to read my report? And so they were very intrigued by it, that what we found. And I had another investigator found it. I don't want to get into that, but the bottom line was, in terms of UFOs, the curve goes up because most places that started getting broadband in major cities and their suburbs started trickling in the late 90s. We started getting off dial-up, but by 2001, broadband was becoming very available in major metropolitan areas and their suburbs, and that's when you start seeing the curve coming up. Now, the next big thing was people knowing where to report it on the internet. Okay, there's that. So we call one of the major drivers is people's access to broadband. People in rural areas probably have as many sightings as other areas, but they don't have the access to broadband to report it.
Right. That would make a lot of sense.
By the way, I love the backgrounds in both your studios.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Once upon a time, mine looked like Amelia. My office looked like Amelia's.
Did it? I had an antique doll, but she lasted all of one show. I had to remove her because she's got a little bit of an attitude, but a lot of people were creeped out by it. I got text messages, mostly from my family, saying, "Can you remove her? It's my grandmother's doll. Can you remove the doll, please? It's really freaking me out." I'm like, okay.
In another part of my life, I could talk circles with you about paranormal, but we're going to talk UFOs.
We'll do that next time.
We'll do that another time.
Yeah, we'll do it next time.
I will say this up front. UFOs do have a paranormal quality to them. Okay. And if you really truly look at all the other paranormal effects, it's all one effect, and that's just one flavor of it, but it's all one effect. And they shouldn't, all these groups, dowsers won't talk to the ghost hunters. The ghost hunters won't talk to the UFO guys, It's
ridiculous. There is a connection.
They're all the bloody same.
Yeah. You need to communicate. Unity is really lacking in our field.
I been doing this, 18 years, but I can't tell you how many times where I am at a location and there is a strong UFO connection with sightings on both. And it's fascinating. It's a really deep rabbit hole, but it's really fascinating. We'll bring you on again and we'll
A
do it.
yawning rabbit hole.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. See, that just gives us another reason to bring it back.
There you
I
go.
love it.
I wrote a story. I wrote about 2 weeks ago. I wrote a special story for a newspaper out in California. Okay. I can't send you the link for it because they put it on their newspapers are hurting for money. So if they get a
Right.
really hot story, they put it on premium subscribers only type of thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Of course, our
Yeah.
network has that too,
And-
so it's okay.
Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about.
It's true.
And it was a 3-page story, about 1,200 words,
Mhm.
and it was straight talk about UFOs. And the editor went bananas, and she went to go check some of the stuff, and she went down the rabbit hole. I feel so bad for her. The next 2
You
days,
did
that's
it.
all she could look at, so.
Yeah, she had to do it. So of course you have done all of this work statistically. You've analyzed everything, and obviously you've making a few people look a little silly who aren't as thorough perhaps as they should be. And I say government being one of them. I'm going there.
I'll go there with you on that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
In fact, I'm preparing, quite literally, I'm preparing slides
Ooh.
to give to the select Senate Intelligence Committee.
I like it.
Okay.
Exciting.
I'm plotting
them out,
UFO
girl.
sightings in the United States right down to the zip code, which is how congressmen measure where people are who vote for them, right?
That's
And
right.
I've literally generated a map for every single state in the union,
Wow.
UFOs by zip code. And
Wow.
that's been a
That's
head
gonna
knocker.
mess them up.
Been a head knocker. It really has, because sometimes some of the zip codes that were in the database were not right. And but of 167,632 records in my database, only about 36 were messed up. So I'm in the process of correcting them in the database.
So that's going to put egg on their face, considering they've only tackled 144 in the preliminary.
Yeah, that's what bothers me. Well, see, all of this got shut off back in 1968 after Congress had a guy by the name of Dr. Eugene Condon do a report. He was at the University of Colorado, and he had his mind made up. This is all nonsense a year before the report came out. And his staff even protested the final version of the report because he was saying there's nothing to it. There's no reason to spend any money on it. Don't allocate any money on it. There's nothing to it. Nothing to be learned, quote, nothing to be learned by studying UFOs.
Sure.
So he has essentially shut it off for the last 50 years. There was no government money for government agencies to research it. There was no money for academic people to research it. Okay. Now, 2 secrets about that. One of the things was we might be having a different conversation right now had the Air Force, who was supposedly supplying him with information, failed to tell him that these things were shutting off missile silos and missiles out in the Midwest. They didn't tell him that. And had they told him that, but the Air Force wanted out of the UFO business, so it was convenient not to tell him. But so we've lost 50 years of possible research by what I'm going to say competent agencies that should have been doing this job. Linda, sorry she couldn't be here tonight. She was a little under the weather.
Oh, give her our
maybe
best.
next
I'm so
time.
sorry.
Yeah.
It's
Okay, we kept her on that promo because it's still the work from both of you. So
she thought about coming down for the first half hour, an hour, but we both have been fighting a bit of a head cold, and I got it, gave it to her. So now she's where I was 3 days ago, and we're drinking Dayquil and all that stuff.
Just let her rest. She doesn't need. She can come on next time.
Actually,
she's always welcome.
Actually, that's a point I should bring up to you. We come at the topic from 2 different positions. One, she's the publisher of our books.
Right.
Okay. She's got the science degrees. Me, I've got an arts and entertainment degree. I got the top hat and the cane. So that's the problem here.
Right there.
We're those 2 in a different way.
You get it.
Yes.
You get it.
I always say I'm the comic relief on the show.
There you go.
Michelle stats and research. Yeah.
So I'm the one who usually ends up. She doesn't speak in front of audiences of 5,000 people. I do. Right. Not a big deal.
Right.
I'm used to
We
it.
won't tell you tonight, Dan.
I did theater. Well, I know we got a huge audience there. I did community theater since I was 15 years old. Okay,
Nice.
so I got 50 years of community theater under my belt. Not necessarily on stage. I'm a published playwright and everything, and director, producer
so
type of
my
thing.
Cousin. Yeah.
But the bottom line on it's just she and I come at this from two different perspectives. She's got those science degrees. She held me to some rigid standards when we were doing the first book. By the time we got around to doing the second book, I pretty much did most of it. And then she took a week vacation just before we published. She took a week's vacation. She had to burn some that was going to go away. And she came home. We had 2 weekends, and the week in between, I laid out all the stuff I'd been going. Every time I generated a chapter, I took a thumb drive over to Staples and I printed it out, and then I laid them all out on the floor, on the bed. And she'd say, "No, we're going to put these first. These are going to go second. No, this is going to go in the back of the book. No, I don't want that in there. That kind of thing." So she was playing publisher. She does a good job at it. She's experienced in scientific publishing. She did it at the I'm going to draw a blank here. She did it at the National Academy of Science, and she was the head librarian at the Environmental Protection Agency's Toxicology Library for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Toxicology library.
So she knows more about economic poisons than you can shake a stick at. And when I say economic poisons, toxic pesticides, all this kind of stuff.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to ever cross her because she knows more about organic poisons than you can shake a stick at.
Yeah, that
I always tell people
favor.
the only thing that is organic is when it's grown in your backyard and you know exactly what's going on it.
Thank you.
I'm Italian. I grew up with an acre garden behind us all summer. So yeah.
Yep.
So
where do you want to go?
Your thoughts on disclosure? Did you do it better than them?
What disclosure? Just asking.
Well, actually, if you read that, I wrote 2 articles. I didn't expect very much. Okay.
Right. No.
And on my private feed, I said, I'm not expecting very much. I lived in a Buddhist monastery for 7 years.
Oh my.
I've learned to set my expectations very low. Okay. But that preliminary briefing, the Defense Department was hedging their bets. They really didn't want to come clean. And they're going to be wrestling with Congress with this because Congress is saying, we want you to come clean. That's what that bill was about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But they said a lot of things. First thing, they didn't say there's no such thing as those guys.
But they didn't say there is either.
No, but leaving it open.
What they're not saying. Yeah.
It's what they're not saying. Remember, they only have 140 sightings.
Oh, yeah.
There was a thing about 4 weeks ago. They showed a piece of fuzzy footage of this sphere UFO. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the USS Omaha got it in 2019.
Right.
And
saw that.
I had a journalist on the West Coast call me up and say, "Hey, you're supposed to be a hot statistics gal. Are spheres a thing?" Yeah, it's the number 3 silhouette reported, 17,000 in the last 20 years. Yeah, they're around, In fact, it was the first thing I ever saw, So it's there's a lot to it. But they also use word security and the word security and the word threat enough times, like upwards of half a dozen to a dozen times. So that gives the chairpersons of these intel committees the ability to a justification to hold congressional hearings. Okay, now here's where the problem is for me and Linda.
Mm-hmm.
In 1968, when Dr. Condon did his thing and shut everything down and say, "Oh, nothing to study here. These aren't these aren't the aliens you think they are." What happened is, if it didn't go into a black hole in the government, dark programs.
Yeah.
But judging from the fact that the intel people, the task force guys,
right?
Those are different former Navy, former intel person. Okay. So those were people who have the clearances and the need to know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
And if they couldn't pick open those compartmented reports from the last 50 years of all the very interesting stuff, nobody could.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. But they only looked at those 140 over the last 20 years. Okay.
Mm.
And that was puzzling to me. It's like they're ignoring the last 50 years worth of activity. But remember what I showed you on my chart?
Yes.
People think that 1960, 1970, those were the golden years of UFOs. You know, you look at the chart, 2001 to 2020 have been the golden years of UFOs.
Right.
Okay, everybody thinks there was a guy who was a producer for that program that was on the History Channel, Project Blue Book.
Yes.
Mhm.
He was interviewed at one of our conferences out in Nevada a couple of years ago. And he was up on stage being interviewed by one of our notable press guys, George Knapp. And George asked him a question. He says, you know, there's a big UFO stuff going on, not just in the 40s and 50s. He said, yeah, we were rather surprised. We thought it was only something that happened in the 40s and 50s.
Mm-hmm.
So I had only 2 copies of the book with me. I don't cart a crate of them to the conferences. I give them a little card to say, this is where you can order it, you know?
Right.
And I'm an old lady. I'm not going to cart 100 pounds worth of books with me here. You know,
They get pretty heavy.
I'm going to qualify this for the audience. I'm an old lady. Okay. I got an AARP card. I draw Social Security. I draw a pension, you know, so 69 babies.
You don't look it, and I look at it as the last third of your life, and it's going to be marvelous.
My family classically lives into the hundreds. I knew when I was getting out of high school that barring accident or serious disease, I could live to be a centurion. So I've accepted it. My dad was in his 92 when he passed.
My dad, my
November grandmother's
90.
In her late 80s, you know, so 90s, that type of thing. So I'm not worried about it. Considering the life my exotic life I've led, I'm surprised I've made it this far. Believe me, you know.
I always say that about my love of speed, that it's been amazing that I haven't flipped a car or a motorcycle before I was 20. So.
Well, I was 19 years old climbing telephone poles in Vietnam. Okay, people shoot at you on those things, you know.
That's right.
You know,
yeah.
Practice. No.
That kind of thing. And of course, you know, you carried a step further. I was in 2 services. So I was in the Air Force then. A couple of years later, I was in the Navy, and I was in nuclear submarines.
Well, thank you for your service. It's
You're
Canada
welcome.
Day here today in Canada. It's our
hey.
birthday. So thank you for your service. We're thanking all service people today.
I am sitting on the St. Lawrence. I'm in a cottage on the St. Lawrence River, and I'm looking over, quite literally looking over at Prescott and Brockville, waiting for their fireworks to go. You know,
to start.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll
nice.
be having them though, because we're still in lockdown up here.
Oh, the headline we read said it's all.
They're going to do it.
It's open.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't know. I don't know if they're going to do
Fingers
it.
I hope
crossed. Fingers
So if you
crossed.
start hearing explosions here in a little bit,
That's
I
what
got
it
the
is.
I've got the windows open. You know what it is. You know?
That's
All right.
okay.
A little
No
bit
one's
of
being shot.
excitement.
That's all that matters.
Yeah. Now, what's funny is you've got a guy in Canada, Chris Rosenkowski's out in Manitoba, and he
Right.
is my equivalent in Canada. Okay.
Right.
He's got all the best numbers there.
Right.
And after the show, I can give you contact information if you like.
Absolutely. That
Thank
would be
you.
wonderful. Thank you. Well, we're booking practically to the end of the year right now into the new year. So if he's patient, we can actually make it happen.
looking through the shears right now in the big window facing the river, I'm watching explosions and bright lights and colorful lights across the river.
Very
So,
nice. I'm glad that you were able to see fireworks. Not over here, unfortunately.
no, where are you all at? Where are you all at?
I'm in Niagara Falls. You think I would be seeing amazing ones. But we do stream live out of New Orleans, of course. And you know, we're on 107.7 and 105.3 FM in New Orleans. And
It's not just online. Our
No.
primary is the terrestrial radio
Mhm.
waves.
So getting back then to,
Please.
you know, government's just hilarious.
Okay,
and of course,
the disclosure thing. I don't
Yeah,
think
we've got
I
the
think we're
watered
going to
down
get
version
congressional
also.
hearings. I really
Right.
do. Okay.
Right.
Now, one
Right.
of the goofy things is when Project Blue Book closed, they
Right.
were the only people gathering data, and they had like 12,000 sightings, and about 30% of them they couldn't explain.
Right.
Okay. So the only people who have done statistics in the last 50 years is Linda and me. I've
Wow.
already had a couple of people
No
say to me,
pressure.
yeah, are you ready to go testify before Congress? And I said, this should be funny.
Sure.
We've got two gay ladies here. One's a tranny, and oh baby, we're gonna route. That is why the new book, we made it pink.
Ah.
Okay.
I love pink.
We wanted two things. One, two ladies put this together. We
Right.
dedicated it to the first lady who started gathering data. Okay.
Nice.
And I figured if we're at a congressional hearing and they're referring to my work, our work, however you want to look at it. If they're referring to our work, I would love to have those senators up there thumbing through a big pink book.
I like that.
I think that was very, very well planned.
That's right. And hopefully it will be televised to make it even better. I always say, because our network right now is really big, our listenership is international and they love UFO stuff. And I always have said that the best evidence will come from the people themselves. Everyone's armed with a cell phone nowadays. For the most part, everybody's got a camera. People are capturing amazing things. It's all over the place, Of course, drones will be a problem because a lot of people are going to start mistaking, drones. People got
I
to
hear
fudge
that all
and
the
mess
time.
around.
I hear
right?
kooks, nuts, crackpots, and drones. Yeah,
There we
I
go.
hear it.
There we go. So, when people are reporting things to you, what is the most common craft? I did not know. Amelia read off how many? 36 crafts, types of crafts?
33, 36, depending on who you talk to.
30, was it 36?
I know that's why.
No, about 33.
I think it was 33.
I say
33.
33.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did not know there were that many.
No.
Okay.
No, I didn't know how many. Yeah, it's 33. I
Okay.
did not know how many there were. I have always been of the school of what I've been learning in the past year is like cigar shape, sphere, oval, rectangular, battleship Galactica, kind of sizes. But I didn't know about all of these. It's very interesting. Can you tell us about some of these different shapes, and does it mean that they're from different places?
Boy, now you're jumping into Linda's realm.
Yeah.
Linda, a couple of years ago, sat down and said to me, I think the diversity of the different shapes of UFOs is related to cultures. Okay.
Mhm.
You get a car from France, it looks one way. You get a car from England, it looks a different way.
Yes.
You get a car from Russia, it looks different yet. Different cultures style them differently. And we seem to think that might be part of it. Okay. So her argument was that this diversity was a big deal. And essentially, and you hear Lou Elizondo talking about it. He's the guy that ran the ATIP program, non-aerodynamic shapes.
Right.
And when people say to me, "Oh, did you take all the kooks, nuts, and crackpots and drones and all this stuff out?" It's like a line from the movie Amadeus. When the emperor comes up and says, "Fabulous concert, my boy, you did a wonderful job. Take out a few notes and it will be perfect." Okay.
Yeah.
So what we did was, we have 167,000 sightings. To make these people happy, I simply say, let's throw 70% away. 70%, that's a big chunk of it, right? So we keep 30%. And it ends up giving, I'm going to have the numbers in front of me so I don't flub my own stuff here. Yeah. Okay. If I take that 70% and I throw them away, it leaves me 30% of my original data, which would be about 50,000 over the last 20 years. Okay. Or about 2,500 sightings a year. Okay. Now you divide that by 12 months. That gives you a number of 210. That's 210 sightings a month for 20 years worth of sightings. That's 240 months. Okay. Now, all states are not equal, but if we treated all states equal and take that 210, divide it by 50 states, every single state has had 4 sightings a month for the past 20 years, or essentially about 1 a week for the past 20 years. Exotic sightings, the real thing.
Okay.
Wow.
Now, have you ever guesstimated just a rough idea of how many people probably are not reporting out of fear?
Yeah. About 250 people, basically, about 250 people don't report what they see, and one person of that 250 people does.
Wow.
I don't report. I can't tell you how many times in my life
Oh,
I've
I
seen
don't
one.
report. I mean, I'm on a camping trip. I see something, unless it really impresses me, I don't even bother to write it down.
No, I
Right.
know. But for those first timers, like that first few, like I know for me, I wouldn't report it. I'd be more reporting it to Michelle on a phone call at the same time
Do you
because
know
we're
what
best
I
friends.
just saw? Yeah,
You're
I'd be
not
like
going
that.
to believe this, because I've been waiting to see one for the longest time, but I don't think I'd report it. Well, I'd report it to Joe's iCar, but this is Canada, so it's different. I don't know.
Yeah. There's another goofy thing about that. I asked in various Facebook groups a few years ago, who do you report your sightings to? Well, there was one, people did not know where to report them. And we found evidence of that as well. People did not know of the 2 national reporting services. Some people knew of them and didn't trust them and weren't going to file a report with them.
Yeah.
And then there was what I'm going to call the new kiddies on the block, so to speak, are saying to me, oh, I call my friends up on the phone, or I text them and I tell my friends in a private group or something like that, and they're not reporting it to a national reporting center. So there's a lot of different dynamic going on there. But as far as national reporting services, there's a couple of things. One, there was a thing found out during Project Blue Book that said, one of the things they said was sightings were sometimes driven by other sighting reports. Well, back in those days, before 1968, sighting reports, people would call it into a newspaper, so it would end up in the paper, and then other people reported their sightings.
Mm-hmm.
And I've tracked this now since 68. Newspapers don't generally, until recently, don't generally report UFO sightings because they were told it was hogwash. So what happens is you have this thing where, I'll give you an example. A good example, April 16th, 2008, Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
This is a state that averages maybe 3 sightings a week. They had 25 in one day, spread between 2 counties that were adjoining to each other. Okay. Now, in the days after those reported, there were follow-on reports for that state that I tracked in the databases. They weren't about those events that were seen on that day at April 16th, but other people from Indiana saw those articles and said, oh, maybe I should report the one I saw 6 months ago or 2 years ago or whatever. So there's this idea, oh, maybe I should come clean. And a lot of people who report these things, like I said, there's always this issue. People say to me, did you take out the kooks, nuts, and crackpots? Most people, I found this out as a reporter. I'd read through these reports and they were very genuine. I didn't believe in this stuff until my wife and I saw this thing on our back porch last week, that type of thing. And most people felt they needed to get it off their chest. And after the events of 9/11, we were told, report what you see. And people did.
Yeah.
Okay. So they felt like it was their duty more than anything. Okay.
You said Louisiana is one of the places that were on 107, I guess.
New Orleans, yeah.
New Orleans.
Oh, okay. Let's talk about
107.7 FM and 105.3.
Okay, Louisiana in the 20-year period had 1,396 reported sightings, an average of about 70 a year, an average of about 6 a month, and about an average of 1.5 a week.
Cheryl, do they have is it like populated cities because there's more people who have more sightings, or is it the complete opposite?
People asked me that a long time ago before we did the data. And the joke was, is it because the UFOs are watching us because we're cute to watch?
Depends
Or-
what you're doing.
Or is it because there's a lot more of us there to catch that rare event and see it?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
And so it goes both ways. We found out, and I want to be able to read this to you directly. Okay. There are 5 principal drivers and 5, what we discovered for the second book, 5 secondary influences. The principal drivers are 1, population. Okay.
Mhm.
But a lot of people knee jerk and say that's what all it is. No, it's not. We
Mhm.
found out that temperate weather, okay, was an issue. If you're in a northern state or up on the edge of Canada like this,
Yeah.
the sightings are like this: July and August. Okay, the rest of them are down where my arms are. Okay, it's a quiescent amount through the year. Okay, but it peaks in the June, July, August timeframe. If you go into New England states where they have like the leaf season down there, it trims off into the fall kind of thing, and then by November it falls back to winter levels. Okay. Now, who are those people who are out there in the winter, day in, day out? Dog walkers and smokers.
Yeah.
And the MUFON investigators told me that several of them told me this, that when they search a month's worth of sightings and do it like a text search, they search for smoke or dog, because they're out there every day. They're considered reliable observers because they know the normal lay of the land.
It makes sense.
They're
Yeah.
aware of their environment, the surroundings. They know exactly
What's
pretty
up?
habitually too.
And the dogs.
Oh,
Yes.
Dogs usually go, that kind of thing. So it's a pretty cool thing to see this, and I've seen it for years in the sightings. So there's that. So we have population, temperate weather, leisure time. This is one of the big discoveries we made for this book. We suspected it, but a lot of reports I used to read when I read the report would say we were on the laying on the hood of our car watching the stars. We were on the back deck smoking a cigarette. We were doing this. We were doing that. We were at Bible study. Came out in the parking lot and saw this thing. Okay, that kind of stuff. So leisure time was a driver, and what confirmed the leisure time thing was the hours of darkness. 75, and oh my God, the Canadian side just lit up with fireworks. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's that time here. Between 10 and 10:30. Yeah.
So the deal is the leisure time. We confirmed that with the hours of darkness. We wrote a special algorithm to plot the times of the sightings. 70% of the sightings happened between 75% actually, between 5 o'clock at night and 11:30 at night, with the bulk of it happening between about bedtime, 8:30 to 10:30. The rest of it falls off like a rock after about 11:30, and the other 16 hours a day only represent 25% of the sightings. So hours of darkness is a big driver, and I get a lot of bad mail from people saying, "Oh, but we saw our sight at 10 o'clock in the morning." Yeah, you're part of that 25%, So, but it seems to be that, and then the other major driver, access to broadband.
Oh, yeah.
Internet.
There's a lot.
Sense. Yeah.
There's a lot of talk right now about how bad we need to get broadband. Like in the United States, we had a program back in the 30s during the Depression called the TVA Authority that got electrical stuff out into rural aspects of the country. We need a program like that here for getting it out there, broadband out there in the rural areas, both to support everything from farming to mining and anything else that happens away from major metropolitan areas. It's a big deal. And once people have access, they know there's a lot of word out there where they know how they can report the stuff.
So what about like calling into the police departments? Because I've worked with many people where the police departments, oh my God, they were swarmed with, like the small towns, swarmed with phone calls, and like, do they actually even document it, or do they just like
They write
blast
it
them
down
off?
on the blotter, but
I see.
the position I had from a number of active duty police officers that have worked a desk, as they say,
They don't
and
write
they
it down here.
well, no, it depends.
Yeah.
I've talked to newspaper editors. Yeah, we get 6 or 7 of them a week. We throw them in the garbage. That was my
Oh.
editors. That was my editors.
Wow.
At
Yeah.
one newspaper, the newspaper I wrote for, that
Right.
was a different ball game. They let me do whatever I wanted in my UFO column because I was pulling in more page views than all the columnists combined. So that was the big deal. But
Right.
but calling the police department only is helpful if the thing has landed and is causing property damage.
Because that's going to happen. Like,
but
come on.
if you
It's
just-
not even like liable.
if you just see it, they're not interested. But
Oh,
reporting
wow.
it to one of the national centers, both of them do a little bit of investigation. National UFO Reporting Center, if you're honest with them, they'll call you back and talk to you about it. MUFON will get a local state investigator to come out and if necessary, do a field study.
Yes,
I
Miss
know a lot of
Chase
investigators.
Nolte. Yeah.
They're well trained. They are.
Yeah.
They're very well trained. And the
Yeah.
guy we got here in New York, our chief investigator, he's now the assistant director. He's he couldn't do this stuff until he retired from the police department.
I was just going to say, have they ever taken an entire patrol car up? Because that would be fun.
Well, no, they've not done that we know of.
Yeah, but it would be fun for them. All those bells and whistles wondering what they're for.
A couple of years ago, the Virginia State Police published a book of their officers' sightings, blinded. Not okay. It's not so much a heavy book as much as a really big Xerox stack, so to speak.
Yes.
But the guy who's the head investigator here in New York State, he is a retired major crimes investigator. Okay, and he is thorough. And when he talks to people who've had a sighting, he politely runs them through the interrogation ringer. Okay, so he does a really thorough job, and we're all very happy to have him.
Nice. Oh yeah, and he's a natural born investigator. He's going to get to the truth, right?
So then getting back to crafts, what's the most common?
Okay.
That's
okay. Let me say this up front.
By area.
I hear this a lot. Okay. They are across the United States, different places. Excuse me.
Of course.
The head cold.
That's okay. Sorry.
That's okay.
The most prominent sighting of all is a light in the sky. Okay. I saw one of them Christmas Eve, 1971. I was in Cam Bay, Vietnam. A friend and I were walking down to the base chapel to go to midnight mass for something to do. We saw this thing streaking across the sky. Then it stopped. And he looked at me and says, I thought that was a jet. I said, so did I. He said, jets don't stop.
That's right.
Yeah, and helicopters don't fly that fast. And then I said, and by this time, I was pretty well read as 18, 19-year-old because I'd been reading stuff since my 12-year-old sighting. Okay. Right. And I said, if that's what I think it is, it's going to start dancing around like a fairy. And darn if it starts gone,
Yeah.
And neither one of us had our minds on midnight mass when we got there, so.
No.
But the deal is a light in the sky is a very common thing. Something you don't, it's not very distinguishable, but there's that. And then it starts getting down into more specific shapes. The second one is kind of like unknown category, but the third one is sphere. Okay. It's a ball, a silvery ball, if it's in the daytime, that type of thing. They're seen almost everywhere.
Right.
I did a chart a couple days ago where I plotted spheres by all zip codes in the United States, and my computer went into a coma. Nice. I found out what the problem was, but it took 10 minutes for it to regurgitate the data.
Right.
There were so many sightings. Another big one is the triangle shape. Now, there are people in the UFO community will try and tell me it's an experimental craft, but while they're seen everywhere, they predominate the Southwest.
Mm.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And something we discovered with this pink book, I had to tell a couple of reporters who call me up and ask me questions. Have you discovered anything special with the shapes? And they said, yeah, they have seasons.
Okay.
And both reporters went, huh? You know, and I said, some of them, summer only, mostly. Okay. Some of them mostly in the fall, some of them mostly in the winter, that type of thing. Different shapes, different seasons. It's really weird. So there's that. But okay, let's go back to what Linda said.
Right.
The secret was in the exotic shapes, non-aerodynamic shapes, and very exotic. Okay. I came along with a similar preface to go with that. And the truth is in the tiny numbers. Okay. One of the most exotic things that is out there, only have about 480 of them in 20 years. Okay. Is called the changing shape. Okay. But the changing shape was one of the most regularly scheduled flights you could find in my data. It's there like all the time. When it's there, about 75 to 100 a year, right across the graph.
And it changes.
Yeah, the way it's reported, and a number of scientists have reported it like this. You look at it, and then you try to put your equipment on it to take a picture of it or something, and it's not what it morphs. Now,
wow.
Now, did it really morph, or is this like a stealth technology? Let me give you what I think it is.
Okay.
I think it's a living ship that has got the living ship is essentially an AI that's got telepathic capability. It knows we're looking at them. And a lot of people have noted that when they start looking at certain UFOs, the thing starts acting like it knows we're looking at it. Okay. So here's a shape that it knows we're looking at it, and suddenly it looks different to us. Now, did they do some kind of holographic thing around it to make it look differently? Or remember, we perceive with our eyes, but we see with our brain.
Correct.
Did they just did they just telepathically tell us, oh, you're actually saying this, that type of thing, we don't know.
And you think that's AI or hologram?
It could be. If we're developing it, they probably have it,
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that mean AI from government or AI from ET?
ET.
Okay.
I don't think the government's got that advanced yet, personally.
Right.
The government, while there's some really cool black programs out there exploiting technology, I don't think they have the really hot stuff we think they've got.
It's reverse engineering to what degree, right?
Yeah. Now, if they have been doing it, as a taxpayer, I would like to know exactly what they found out.
Sure.
But they're keeping their cards close to their chest here.
Well, sure. Hence the watered down version of the preliminary disclosure and what, the powers
they don't
that
want
we get to see.
Let's go back to why that's like that. Okay. Let's say 1947. 2 years before, we exploded 3 nuclear weapons. Right. Suddenly, we got a calling card out there. And if you look at it from the ET's perspective, oh my goodness, the natives have a box of matches.
Who let the kids out? And how'd they get the matches?
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
All right. So 2 years later, we start. We're 1947. There's a wave of UFOs. We're up to our butt in them. Right. Now, in the June-July timeframe of 1947, which is when Roswell occurred, right? For a 2-month window, we know of at least 750 reports that was documented by a guy by the name of Ted Blocher, but he was an actor, professional actor. He was in touring companies. And he had his afternoons to himself because he didn't work till the evening. So he would go into every town library, go into their morgue, get their newspapers for a 2-month window from June and July and look for local UFO reporting sightings. Because during that time period, the Associated Press was getting reports from 38 states. Okay. So we got all that going on. and of course they did a flyover Washington D.C. at 2 different weekends. The jets went up there to catch them, and they would start winking out on radar. And as soon as the jets went back to base, they all start winking back in. That kind of stuff. And of course the general says, "Oh, this was radar shadows." Oh yeah, they blew it off. Why did they do this? 1938 was only 10 years before. And Orson Welles scared the snot out of the country with War of the Worlds.
Yes.
People were taking their kids out in the backyard and were prepared to shoot them instead of letting the Martians eat them.
Oh, that's
okay. I mean, this is kind of stuff went out. They were afraid that Ma and Pa America was not ready to have this information. And in 1952, the Robinson panel felt that America needed to be educated. Now, 1940s, 1950s, you watched movies. Somebody from outer space was a big, slimy, bug-eyed monster of some sort.
Right.
Here we are now, 70, 80 years later, and our most revered characters in fiction, Mr. Spock, Yoda, Doctor Who.
I'm sorry, Gene Roddenberry, so far ahead of his time. I'm sure he's an abductee.
I think that was part of the effort to educate people personally.
Yes. Everybody says it. Thank you. Thank you. Oh my gosh, I believe that.
Looking back now, yeah.
I do. I believe that. Do you think right now, because the fear factors, now they got to amp it up. So now everything is a national security threat.
Oh yeah.
Right?
This is the beginning of the Cold War all over again. Right. Oh, the Russians have all kinds of equipment. And the reality was all the equipment they had was rusting. But from a satellite photo, and it wasn't satellite, from flyover photographs. Oh my God, they got everything parked out there in the runway. Their equipment was junk. Okay, at that time, it's not like that now. Now, as far as saying China, and would you believe it? Do you like the way they report things? Oh, it might be Russia or China. They might have hypersonic weapons. Yeah, but they forget that these things have been flying circles around our aircraft since the 1940s. They did during World War II. The Germans and the Japanese thought it was us. We thought it was them. And it wasn't until after the war did we find out that the Foo Fighters were from somebody else.
Right. Yeah, well, look at JFK. Like Russia was having so many sightings that he actually enacted a bill, put out a letter saying we will share willingly any information that we have on this because it's not us. And a month later, he's just gone. He was assassinated. Right?
I have a theory about that as well.
It's funny because Marilyn Monroe said a little bit of something too, and ended up dead.
Again, it's one of the great conspiracy theories. And who's it? Nick Redfern did a piece recently on this. He does great stuff. He's a great guy. I've had a beer with him. He's a great guy. Yeah. Take another look at that, though. We had an arms race. Right. Now, Russia had been our ally all through World War II. Were we really having a problem with the Russians? How about we didn't know who these guys are and what their motives were, and they were flying circles around everything we had, and the military said we can't do a thing about them. So suddenly we had an arms race. Now remember what that arms race, it was called MAD, Mutually Assured Destruction. I have another name for it. If they invade us, we'll nuke ourselves morbid so they can't hurt. They can't, just like shooting the kid in the backyard. It was that whole mindset. If we can't live here by ourselves, we'll nuke ourselves till we glow. They won't want us. So,
be a safe bet, I would say. But haven't they been here all along? I mean, you go back to biblical texts and old forms of artwork. Yes. UFOs are freaking everywhere. So they're here, right?
Was Apollo. There's reports of Apollo going from Greece up to the Vikings and everywhere in between, teaching culture, teaching mathematics, teaching agriculture, all this stuff. They've been helping us and shepherding us for thousands of years.
So why the change? The ancients worked with them, believed in them, coexisted with them. They're in paintings from going back that, like thousands of years. It's on the cave walls. I mean, Where did it change? Where and why?
Oh, it's called the Age of Reason.
Oh, don't like the age of reason. I don't like to be reasonable at all, actually.
Okay, if we can't quantify it and
No.
make it believable, heck, academics
It's not
didn't
happening.
believe meteors existed until the mid 1800s.
Right.
They
Till
said
one got
there's
hit
no
by
such
one?
thing as rocks falling from the sky.
Till the leader got hit.
Wait.
Yeah,
It does exist.
Well, you carried
Right.
a step further. In fact, sometimes one of the letters I sent out to a bunch of academics recently, with like that little document I sent you folks, that little
Yes.
briefing document.
Yes,
Right.
thank you.
I put a cover letter with it, and I said, look, 175 years ago, people didn't believe in germ theory. Okay.
Mm.
In the 1930s, if you were in an American Polytechnical school and you told your engineering professor or your physics professor you wanted to study rocket technology, they laughed you out of class. The Germans showed us how to do it in 1940. And what was our space race and the Russian space race? Both of us racing to the moon using our captured German scientists. Okay. Because we certainly didn't have any. Okay, well, we did later when guys had developed fuel and things like that, but they were Wiccan. But funny how that worked out. And so you got all this stuff going on, and then let's say, okay, there was other things that people said couldn't be. Okay, and all of these things have been blown out of the water one by one by one. And my argument to these academics was, guys, we're on the cusp of a paradigm change here, and we need to get our heads in the right mode here. And of course, I sent this out to upwards of 50 different academics, and I was targeted. The universities I sent them to, I sent it to the physics department, of course. They've been dominating the noise on this.
Right.
Psychology, not psychology, philosophy, anthropology, and life sciences. Okay. I was very targeted because they're the ones that have, because right now, if you ask somebody at a major university, when ET comes, okay. When ET comes, and that's what they do. I said, where in the stovepipe of education in the White Tower are you going to fit it? Okay. Okay. Now, for 70 years, it's been like in investigations, it's been driven by the physics people.
Right.
And if you look at groups like MUFON, and I love MUFON and everything, they got great field investigators, but the entire thing, when we came out with our first book, the White Book, people said to me, oh, but you're not field investigators. And oh, you're girls,
It always comes down to the stupid academia of it all.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
If you're not one of the good old boys club sort of thing, whether it's
Thank
in
you.
archaeology,
It really is a good old
it doesn't
boys
seem
club.
to matter, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what, you're not credible? Chances are okay, just send the hate mail to our producer, Joe Montaldo. Just saying,
We're daffy old
Always Joe
retired
Montaldo.
more
ladies,
credible.
You're
probably more credible because there's no agenda when somebody on the outside is just doing something with their own time. They're not looking for funding. You're not looking for, well, you have to fund this experiment that we're doing or fund this project that we're doing. You're doing it out of your own home, your own time, right?
Linda, in the preface to the Pink Book,
Right.
said, here we are again, 5 years. This is almost a quote. Here we are again, 5 years later, doing the government's job.
See, there we go.
Okay. Do we have the
Well
massive resources of the United States government to research this topic matter?
bet not.
No, we have the resources of a retired security professional and an underpaid librarian.
Right. There you
Okay.
go.
And that was the flavor of it, and she was hostile in that preface. We've had mail on that, but
like it.
In fact, she read it to me 3 different times. She said, am I being too aggressive? I said, no.
You're asking the wrong
disagree with
women. You're asking the wrong women if she's being too aggressive. Just letting you know right now. You're asking the wrong people here.
Yeah. So that's just it. So they don't take you seriously. So which means that they're essentially trying to discredit your work by not taking you seriously.
Go away, honey. Let the big boys take care of it.
That's right.
That's what some of this has been.
But you don't have an agenda. They have an agenda to hide.
They have an agenda. Yeah. But the thing is, I've done enough conferences now.
Right.
In fact, I had a lot of people. I would do like a YouTube type of thing for some club or something like that, and they put it up on YouTube,
Right.
and there would be 40 or 50% of the text going down the commentaries. That person doesn't know what gender she is. Oh, how can we trust her numbers? She doesn't know what she is. What is that?
That's a plant.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, yeah,
That's a
that's
plant.
definitely something to cause a distraction.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
everybody would pile on like a pack of hyenas, you know?
Yeah.
So when I did the presentations in 2019, and I was booked for something about every 2 weeks, I would come home from the thing, run the stuff that was in my bag through the laundry and repack it. So if you see pictures from a dozen different presentations I did in 2019, it looks like they were all done at the same conference because I wore the same clothes at every conference, you know?
Right.
Doesn't matter.
But the deal was I added 5 slides to my presentation.
Mm-hmm.
The first 5 slides, one of them I started saying, okay, first thing we got to talk about is the authors. Linda is the other author. She can't be here because she wasn't invited. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
2, okay, here's who I am. And I showed them a picture of that kid in the Air Force uniform. Then I showed them that other kid with the big Navy uniform with a big bushy beard. And then I showed them my glamour shot and said, that's who I was in those days. And this is who I aspired to be. And this is who I am now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as Linda and I concerned, I showed a picture of 2 of us jumping over the broom, you know, and it was a combined Buddhist, Wiccan, Unitarian ceremony.
I love
Okay.
it. I love it.
Back before we could get legally married. Okay. That's
Right.
back in 2015 when we did that.
Right.
In 2005. I'm sorry. Boy, I'm going to
Right.
get shot if I said that.
You're lucky she's not listening.
We don't know that.
So the bottom line was I showed these pictures and said, here's who we are. We're 2 old gay ladies with AARP cards drawing pensions and things like this. And oh, by the way, if you think we're weird, if you can't deal with us, you'll never deal with ET.
Sexuality has nothing to do with researched information and facts.
Oh, it's not just the sexuality. If
dealing with
you met me personally after about spend a day with me, you would think I am weirder than snake suspenders.
I don't know,
We were just
Cheryl.
talking
You
about
really
that
don't
today.
know me.
I think it comes down to the fact that you're dealing with public mindset is very difficult because we absorb. There's always subliminal messages going out. You know, there's always things. Everything gets stereotyped, buzzwords and
labeled.
That's right.
Yeah.
Labels, buzzwords, just everything's got to have I'll just use the pandemic as an example. For example, vaccine, the jab. We're going to make it cool. Get your jab. I'm like, how about just get
there's
vaccine?
countries that are
If
paying
that's your
you.
thing, why does it have to have a buzzword? Why does anything have to have a buzzword? Is the point I'm trying to make. I'm only using that one because it's the most recent. Okay. So with that being said, it's like enticing the public to think a certain way. So unfortunately, you know, in our day and age, people have their own mindsets on labels, as you say. It doesn't change the fact that you've spent all of these years, both of you, doing this research, and this research is viable and it makes sense, but it goes against the government's research, you see.
Well, that's if the government is actually doing research, which I do not believe they have been.
You know, that's a good point, though. I read that in the papers you sent, and I went, holy shit. She's right.
Well, that they're not going to tell you, that's for sure.
Okay, if there are some dark programs out there.
Yeah.
Okay. And when I worked at Lockheed, I worked on a couple. Okay.
Right.
Nothing to do with this stuff, but you know, I worked on some dark programs, and it's a necessity of the military industrial complex with the relationship with the military, giving them the better tools, you know.
Right.
But judging from, I was saying that earlier in the program, judging from how the task force is operating, they were only talking about the 140 that they knew about. you know.
Right.
And if you looked at that chart you had there, Amelia, from 1960 to 2020, I had 180,000
Anything for you,
50
Cheryl.
sightings. And
Even though I can't see.
these are the ones that were reported.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is the goofy part about it. They weren't paying attention to any of this. So I have been putting together, I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to tell you anyway.
Say it. It's just us girls. Go ahead.
I've been up here in this cottage we're pushing week 2 here in the cottage. Okay.
That's nice. Yeah.
Nice.
It's not mine. My best friend from 2nd grade owns it, and
But you get to be out there. That's nice.
yeah,
Get away from everything.
I get away from everything. Okay.
Yeah.
And I get to run around here in my pajamas all day and just, if I want to cook, if I
decompress.
want to work on numbers, I can decompress, whatever,
Yeah.
Right.
Earth.
So, okay. What was I going to say? It had with this stuff.
Right.
I don't think, the people in the intelligence committee, they have the clearances to look and the need to know. Those are the 2 qualifications to this stuff. They had the need to know to pick open those other compartments of stuff. Now, I asked Lou Alessandro. I interviewed him 3 times as a journalist. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
One time very formally with Tom DeLong's public relations company listening in on the phone call.
Mm-hmm.
Then 2 other times I was at a MUFON conference and I had a coffee and a donut with him. One day during one of the talks, I was talking to him. I said, you would have had the clearance. Now, I worked in compartmented stuff when I was in the Navy. I said, so did you have the clearance and need to know high enough to pick open all that stuff related to this kind of stuff? He said, yeah. Now, Lou's got a very stoic look. Okay. He's a nice guy, but if you look at him most of the time, he looks like he needs a case of prune juice. And I don't mean that as an insult, Lou.
Are we talking 8-pack or 12-pack?
But he's a very stoic looking guy. And I looked at him at one point and I said, if you had that clearance, did you have that clearance, that level of clearance and need to know? And he said, yes, I did. And I said, did you pick open those things? He said, first thing he said, the ones we could find. The government is notorious for not classifying like a top secret clearance, top secret, that type of thing. They're notorious from like my wife, the librarian's viewpoint. They're notorious for bad classification and cataloging.
Oh.
So he couldn't find certain things because God only knows, did they file it under aliens? Did they file it under grass damage and circles left in someone's lawn? Who knows what they filed it under? But I said, of the ones you were able to read, so was it worth it? He got a look on his face like a kid on Christmas morning. Yeah, it was worth it.
Wow.
Okay. So there's some of this stuff. There's a thing in military classification, government classification. Most civilians don't understand. The idea is it's in tiers based on the possible damage knowledge of this issue can be. Okay. One is just private, just to be prejudicial to what we're doing. That's like confidential. Get up the secret, it might cause grave damage, and the word grave means it could put you in your grave. And then like top secret gets up into the area of a catastrophic damage to the country. Okay. And then if there's clearances above that, compartmented clearances above that, they've got their own criteria. All right. So most things are declassified, even the worst case things. World War II. Who were the guys that blew up certain dams and things like this? All this intelligence stuff, They usually wait 50 years on the idea that most people are dead in 50 years that were involved with a war or the intelligence or whatever. Okay. They usually 50 years is usually the time limit, and they start declassifying at that point. This fell into a completely different category. Barry Goldwater, the senator from Arizona back in the 60s, went to Curtis LeMay, who at the time was the head of the Air Force. And he said, Curtis, can I see the green room, and can you tell me what's going on in there? And Curtis LeMay told him, don't ever ask me about it again. It's got a classification higher than the H-bomb. Okay. So obviously they've decided that there's some issue that makes this thing very, very sensitive to everybody. Now, back in the day, in the 60s, yeah, maybe this is the whole idea of let's assume that there was, we don't understand it. We have no defense against it. We don't want anybody to get scared. We don't want the country and the financial systems to fall apart. I used to hear the one, oh, they'll never reveal this stuff. It'll destroy oil. COVID destroyed oil. You know, if you looked out there, at one point during COVID, they were a barrel of oil was negative $45 a barrel, you know, that kind of thing. So everything that happened to us with COVID during our year of lockdown, so to speak, I call it a year of house arrest. Hey, I did it, what everybody else did. I ate too much. I watched too much streaming TV. Okay. I got yelled at by my doctor. I'm a diabetic. I fell off the wagon. Oreos, eat them.
It's easy too, though, when you're locked down.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Amazingly enough, the 15 or 20 pounds I gained from that, I have taken that back off again. I'm back on the wagon. I'm very disciplined, you know. So, okay, the bottom line on all of this is all the terrible things we thought would happen happened. Okay. Now, people keep saying to me, a couple of radio hosts have asked me, why now? Why now? We've had activists and UFO lobbyists down there for 20 years. Why now? I'm of two beliefs. One, my primary belief is ET has reached out to them in modern times now. Again. Okay. Point one. And said, if you don't tell everybody, we will. Okay. Point one. Or, ET reached out to them and says, well, you stupid idiots, your ecology, we've been telling people for years, take care of your planet. Your ecology now is at the tipping point. And if you don't reveal, we're going to help you, but you're going to have to let people know we're here. And okay. I think I'm citing on the idea we've hit the ecological tipping point. Hey, look at the Northwest right now. They've got a heat wave up there that is unprecedented. It was 90 degrees in the Arctic last week. Yeah. Okay. This is unprecedented.
Yeah.
Hold that thought. Station ID and sponsor.
Yeah,
please.
I was just going to say that. It was between that and sneezing. But right now, if you're tuned into us in New Orleans, you're listening to The Outer Realm with Michelle Desrochers, Amelia Pisano, and our special guest. And we're just loving her, Cheryl Costa, tonight. And we are on 107.7 FM and 105.3 FM in New Orleans. We love you. You can see and watch us on, I can't even speak tonight. Let's start that over again. You can hear and watch us on YouTube and participate with us in the chat room only on YouTube if you're just tuning in, as well as different chat rooms on Facebook, but we can only interact with you on YouTube. I'm like lost it tonight. So sorry. We are United Public Radio, and this broadcast is fully sponsored by the great people at Folgers Coffee. Thank you, Folgers. I don't know the other names.
That's okay. And we're back. So
wow. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Got tongue-tied.
Okay, so you think that they're here to help us because environmentally speaking, we've tipped the scale and that's it. Now they've got to intervene. Do you think that the government, now that this is big national security risk, are we looking at some kind of a tug of war here? Or do you think they're going to do it amicably? See, I like that.
Okay.
All right. This looks juicy. Let's do it.
When I interviewed Lou Alessandro,
right,
he had important stuff to pass up the chain of command.
Right.
Stuff that should have gotten on the desk of, at that time, Defense Secretary Mattis. Okay. Couldn't get it up through middle level management. Hey, I was a corporate weenie for 32 years. There were things that we just couldn't get up the chain of command. You know, right. I was at one point in the career, I was one of the 3 antivirus gurus at the company. And we
Wow.
wrote, two of us wrote a paper and said, hey, we're going to get hit with this kind of a virus down the road here. It's going to be a plague level event. And we got blown off by middle level management. Oh, the boss doesn't like bad news. We're not going to pass this up. So when the event happened about 18 months later and shut the company down for over 10 days and cost us $500 million, somebody stood up with a piece of paper and said, didn't we know about this? And somebody said, yeah, Cheryl and this other guy wrote this paper 2 years ago and warned us. Okay.
Ouch.
Okay.
Bit of a
So
burn
here's the deal. Lou's trying to get this information up to that all this is going on out there in the Atlantic with the Nimitz and all these other people.
Right.
And those sailors, I met some of those guys from the radar ship, the Princeton, that was with the Nimitz with that first event. That we hear most about. And some of those guys lost marriages over it because they were sworn to secrecy. So here are a bunch of people that are sworn to secrecy that have had the reality completely changed. My God, it's real.
You need to talk to our producer, Joe Montaldo, who was also on the Nimitz.
There you go.
And they had an experience, and he was also
He had to sign a non-disclosure.
and it just phased out, and he was just able to talk about it this past year.
Eventually,
on our show.
yes.
Yeah,
But the problem was some of these people, they couldn't tell their wives. So there's stress. There's this PTSD thing going on. There's no counseling being available. And so some of the wives are looking and saying, well, who is she?
Right.
Okay. And I talked to a couple of guys that told me it got down to that. Okay. Because their reality got changed that particular day. Their reality got changed. All the guys in that radar CIC room got their reality changed. And this is the paradigm shift we're going through. This is going to be that big flip because there's a lot of people in the country. Okay. Polls used to say 36% were true believers in this stuff. Okay. I hate that word believers. I prefer the word knowers. Okay. Because those of us who have an anchor into this thing have seen something really weird or had an up close personal contact with them. Okay. Knowers, 36% or so. And then they say about 42 to 45%. These are about 6 or 7 different polls have said this over the last 12 years, are on the fence. Okay. 80% say they think the government is not being square with us. So that's at 36% and that 42% added up. And there was about 17% said, it's baloney. Okay. Well, that 17% that say it's baloney, that's about 45 million adult Americans. That's a lot. Okay. Are these the guys that are going to go? Are they going to jump off bridges? Or what are they going to do? When we say this stuff is real. Now, right now, nobody believes that the COVID virus is real. There's some people out there who believe that. There's people who believe the earth is still flat. Okay. And there's people that say that jab in the arm, they're going to put a chip into us, that kind of thing. I've heard all of this. And the bottom line is it defies logical, critical thinking. And that's the deal. So my concern, I think I think there are people in the government that still think it's 1952 and that Ma and Pa America can't handle it. But the most attended movies are Star Wars movies. Okay. And that type of thing. I think we've heck, I've got greeting cards over here with green aliens on them, come on, so I think we're ready for it, but I think there's that concern that it's going to have major societal implications. It used to be in the 50s. Oh God, who will people worship if they find the reality completely changed? These days, most people have to tell you, I'm spiritual. I don't go to church,
I think, people, many people have just lost, faith in their religion, so to speak, just because life has just been really hard, and you always look to religion to respectively save you. But at the end of the day, you're saved in a different way. It's not always such a financial thing, right?
I'm a Buddhist. Nobody saves you.
There you go.
You have to save yourself.
I'm just down the road from one of the largest Buddhist temples, in Ontario. It's beautiful, just massive things. But
I was an ordained Buddhist nun for 7 years, you know,
I
so
love it.
you know,
Yeah.
buzz cut, wore my
Yeah.
robes to work at Lockheed Martin headquarters every day, pushed their diversity policy to the bleeding edge.
I would
You
do
know
it.
what? Buddhism is huge in Italy right now.
Yeah.
Buddhism is just flying through there. There's a huge acceptance for it and crave for it, and they're following. It's incredible.
But let's look at a Buddhist principle here. And one of the ones my Lama and I had a long talk about. We talked about this topic matter, okay, of like UFOs and off-worlders, okay? Because Buddhist requirements for a monastic, when you're taking your vows, you can't be a slave, you can't be this, you can't be that, okay? You cannot be from another world.
That's very peculiar.
And that's a 2,500,
Wow.
2,600-year-old rule.
That's still very sorry.
I didn't know that.
That's very
Okay.
peculiar.
Well,
Wow.
you would only know that if you were trying to be ordained to become a monastic. Okay.
Okay,
That
so
is incredible.
2,500 years, though, that tells you right there
Yep.
that they were aware of other life forms. Again.
Yes, very much so.
Right.
So there's that. Let's see. What's the other aspect? Oh, okay. It's about adjusting your view of reality.
Mhm.
Okay. A
Mhm.
lot of people have a very narrow view of reality.
Tunnel vision.
And
Yeah.
people who are a little bit more accepting have a little bit more elastic view of reality. And
Mhm.
people who have an even bigger view of it have a very elastic view of reality. Okay. And that's part of the problem is that, again, they're all accepting that this is all there is. Right.
Hmm.
And
That's-
guys, this is a trumped up illusion. It's the proverbial holodeck on
Oh,
steroids.
come on,
you
are we
know?
in a dang matrix?
Yes. You know?
Shit. Wow. Okay.
And when you get to a certain point,
Yeah.
I found this out in the living in a monastery. Again, I lived in the monastery, but I went to work every day at Lockheed. It was a really strange dichotomy, you know. But
Right.
the thing is that when you start really getting deep in your meditation and start really looking at things, all of this stuff is as fragile
Mm.
as smoke.
Right.
Okay. So the idea of people from other worlds, hey, the Buddhists, we build the great consciousness, and it shares life everywhere in the universe. The universe is teeming with life.
Right.
Everywhere, every win.
100%.
Okay. And that's the thing. And we don't teach that. That's what I tell people. And this is about being everywhere, every win, you know. In fact, one of the comments I made once that we were at some kind of a ceremony where they're going to offer something, and they said, you know, they went around the room, 35, 40 people, and said, does anybody else want to make a request for, you know, like the thing? And everybody passed out, and you see this in Wiccan circles all the time. They're passing out the blessing from this event by the spoonful. Okay. Oh, I want some blessing for my cat who needs surgery, and my grandmother who's on a respirator or on dialysis, whatever. And then go around the room, and everybody's doing this. And I finally got very sick of it, listening to it. I just said, I make this offering for every being, everywhere, every win.
Right.
Yeah.
And the monk next to me says, yeah, what she said. You know, it needs think big.
Right.
And one of my lamas said, think big. Because it is big.
Yeah. You know how they say pray for the people, you know, that you love. I always pray for the world.
Perfect.
I do. In my prayers, I do say, God, please bless everyone. We are no better and no less than each other. But that's just part of something that I do. We have Joseph Mines is in our chat room. Are you up to taking a question, Cheryl?
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl.
Short of my ATM pin number, I'll pretty much answer anything.
Couldn't get mine because I never remember it. So, Cheryl Costa, what do you think about JFK? I've heard so many things. Why they keep pushing the report back?
I mean, about JFK's assassination?
He wrote just JFK, I'm assuming.
For
Is that
sure.
what you mean, Joseph?
Okay, because
Because that
That is-
report came out a long time ago.
a
It's just
long
blacked
time
out.
ago, a long
It's just
time ago.
blacked out. You can get it online if you Google it.
Yeah,
Yes,
no,
you can
I've not
get
paid
that
attention to
online.
it.
You can get that online.
I think he was ready to tell it, and somebody in the bigger, I don't want to call it a cabal, but somebody in some level of stuff decided that somebody made the judgment American people are too stupid to accept this, so.
Yeah, that was like the genesis of conspiracy theorists
Yeah.
when he was assassinated. They throw in a patsy. It was the perfect theory. It really went really well. There was more than one shooter too. I'm just going to tell you, you don't get shot from three different directions.
There was, and
Yeah.
my flavor has been, the mafia had it in for him because they did not like what Bobby Kennedy was doing over in the Justice Department. Okay, and I think I've long believed that, and I've heard the UFO side of it and everything, but I think it was actually more down to earth than ET.
I believe it as well. And I said to people have tried to have me look at it in a different way, but I can tell you just from my experience of the work that I do, that there were there's two shooters for sure. I'm believe there's a third, Joseph. And they were his own people because his regular CIA agents didn't even show up for work that day. So you need to take a really good look at that and why the best of the best were not walking beside that car that day.
Yeah, there was more to it than that, but again,
much.
You can argue this all day.
Giancana was pissed with him. Yeah.
Something we were talking about a minute ago. Now, the other part of this thing that could blow the lid off the thing is experiencers. There are millions and millions of experiencers.
Yes.
And experiencers can be, they used to be called abductees for the people who don't know the term.
Contactees.
A long time ago, 2014 time frame, I was at a conference and been there a couple of years, and I was there on press credentials. And they had a meeting like 7 o'clock in the morning for experiencers, but regular people were not regular. Press was definitely not allowed. And it ran kind of like a little AA meeting in the morning between about 7 o'clock in the morning to about 8:30, and everything got going at the conference about 9. So I went to the therapist who honored her, who acted as a moderator. And I asked her, I said, look, I just want to learn. I leave my credentials upstairs. I'd like to learn. Now, I'd believe all the stuff I saw on cable TV, I got probed. Oh, it was terrible. They took my eggs,
That's
all this
the big
stuff.
one right there. Yeah.
And I went in there. My spouse went with me. Linda went with me. And we both went in there kind of half expecting to meet 25 or 30 people crying in their coffee. They got probed. Okay. We get in there. There's about 150, 175 people in there. And this meeting has all the energy of a tent revival. Very different energy. Right. And the general tone of it was, those folks were great. And by the way, they told us to take care of our world. That was a summary of it. But a lot of people were in there bearing, people were in there bearing their souls because all these other people were up and out and telling you about it. All right. So, okay, let me go back to when I was a nun. One day, our High Lama this is the Orthodox Tibetan tradition. Okay, we think the Dalai Lama is a radical. Okay, he's in the more liberal Reform tradition. We were the Orthodox tradition.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're out there, and there's like 40 of us, monks and nuns, and we're out there. And after Lama had been doing a teaching, we had 500 people in the temple. They had all gone away, and he wanted to do a hot dog and weenie roast kind of thing. Okay, hamburgers and hot dogs. So we got out the charcoal grills, got it going and everything, and so we were outside having this great little time with the High Lama, and somebody asked him a question. Asked a question about, well, are there? We talk about there being beings everywhere. Are there beings in like other planets or maybe on the moon or something like that we don't know about? And he sat there and he thought a moment, and he scanned the monks and nuns who were standing there in a semicircle, and he looks at me and another nun that was a buddy of mine. And he said, you two have been touched by dakinis, sky dancers.
Wow.
Okay. And I was going, I was like, this was like I've been being outed, you know? Excuse me.
Of course.
And he says, so on the moon, how many people live on the moon at any one time of the other people? And I looked at my friend Vicky and I said, it's seasonal. And she says, yeah, I know. Holiness, what time of year? Okay. So, and then he gave through a number out and we said, oh, okay. Then we gave a number. Okay. And after that, for months, I'm talking like 4 or 5 months, none of the other monks and nuns would talk to me and Vicky.
You're just the black sheep now. Black sheep nuns is what you guys were.
I had already been the black sheep. This just took a dimension further, you know.
Oh my gosh, you're evolving.
Yeah. The trick is they've touched millions upon millions of people. Dr. Mack knew this, and some of the people who work with it now know this. But you try to reach out to somebody, a social worker. I wrote the New York State Society of Social Workers 3 times. Crickets every time, and it was a very sane, thought out letter. I gave it to I do take therapy, not for anything like this. I have a problem with I'm a training person and my family hates me, you know, so I have to deal with it that way. So my therapist looked the letter over and he said, this is perfect. I couldn't have written a better letter. He said, send it to him. So and he has gotten to the point of being frustrated. And now it's been almost 3 years and never a response. Other experiencers are dealing with this. They can't reach out and talk to a social worker or a therapist because, those things don't exist. You're crazy. And they don't want that label.
Right. That's really difficult because, people aren't going to come forward. You know, our producer, Joe Montaldo, owns a site called ICAR, ICAR, and they've got almost 70,000 clients who are abductees and experiencers, contactees who have basically, gone under or had recollection of accounts. And it's staggering the amount of people that have come forward. But when you look at the grand scheme of, let's say, your research, which also shows how many sightings there actually are, how many more people have not come forward, not even just with a sighting, but with an experience. Because I'm sure he's just like, we should be getting a lot more people contacting because they are out there. Like I can account for myself, but I mean, I haven't gotten anybody.
Well,
Nor would I.
I was just, my spouse is currently reading the book about John Mack that Ralph Blumenthal, formerly of the New York Times, wrote. It's a brilliant book, The Doorstop. I'm dyslexic. I can't read a book like that. I got to get the audio book. But the thing is somebody asked me recently on a show, how many experiencers do you think there are? I had no good rule of thumb. I said, well, it's been said millions. And he really pressed me on this show. He said, how many? I said, okay, 42 million and change. He said, where are you getting that number? I said, the 42 million people, that 16% we were talking about that said they had seen the UFO. There are people, and I've done articles like this when I was writing my column, people up in the Adirondacks, some isolated little lake where there's no infrastructure around it. It's just a big thing of water out there in the woods, right? And people go there to hunt and camp and that type of thing. And they have an experience. Something comes down. It's very identifiable. Let's say there's 8 people. 5 of them or 4 of them can see it for what it is. 2 of them see it, but it's cartoonish to them in their interpretation. And the other 2 it's looking right at it and they can't see it.
Oh, poor Cheryl.
So remember that idea of what's processed in your brain. So if a person says they saw a UFO, they're touched. Their reality was elastic enough to see it. Okay. And I think a lot of people were touched very young and had been prepared to be able to see it.
I would agree.
Okay. And if you read Whitley Strieber's books,
Uh-huh.
he refers to a thing he had on a train when he was in the dream. He was noticing there was like soldiers on the train. We're all on these gurneys with the aliens, that type of thing. And I think that's a big portion of our culture has been touched by them already, adjusting us to this bigger reality.
Hey, there's theories that we're a product of them. You know, there's all that's this evolution that we are. If they've been here all this time, what's to say that we don't have some of that DNA?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's all of that.
Maybe
It's
they're
all
all
that ancient
in the
alien
future.
stuff. You know, it really
Well,
is.
it's all out there. Just, you know, what people believe or don't believe. I mean, there's stuff out there. Where does it come from?
That's it. And now, remember we were talking about the fact that Lou couldn't get his stuff up through middle level management.
Right.
There was a particular sect in the middle level management that had, I'm saying this respectfully, had Christian objections to making contact with ET.
Right.
And I think this is what we're seeing now with the little battle that's going on over at the Pentagon that the general public doesn't know about. There are people who don't want to touch this. Now, I took Nick Pope aside at one of the.
I love him.
Oh, he's a great little guy.
Just saying, I love him.
I do too.
I want that. I'd love that guy on the show. He's amazing.
My pills are wearing off.
Oh, I'm
Sorry.
sorry.
Hey, we only got
Nick.
10 more minutes. We're fine.
All right.
Hey.
Okay, Nick, I cornered Nick Pope at the last conference I saw him at.
Mm.
And I said, Nick, what is the hook? What are they hanging this fear of having any contact with ET because it's touching the demons? And he told me that there was a line in the Bible referring having contact with the Prince of the Air. Okay.
Really? That's
Yeah.
interesting.
That's the line he quoted to me. But the thing is these people were in middle level management. And if you think about this, and this is easily researched,
Right.
the Air Force has been largely silent about this. Have you noticed?
Just a little bit.
And guess what? If you read articles from a few years ago, they have pretty much, the Christian right has pretty much taken over the Air Force Academy.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So now, and they did that for a long time. And so those kinds of people have evolved up through the ranks. Okay.
Right.
And so there was this level of management that, we're not going to bother the Secretary of Defense with this information. You know, we don't want to have contact with the demons. Oh, we shouldn't do this, you know? So this has been a gross failure. For the military types out there, you're going to appreciate this line. This has been a gross failure of the reporting chain of command. Okay. Every high level representative in a military organization expects to be able to get information from a private all the way up through the chain of command. Okay. It should not be like we have in corporations. The boss doesn't like bad news. We're just not going to give it to him.
No, Nick
Okay.
would know. He was with the British Ministry of Defense in England. So he gets the whole hierarchy thing, right?
Yes,
Like,
he does.
Yeah.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
And Lou and I had a long conversation about this. And he said he didn't want to trash anybody, but couldn't get it above certain levels. And I said, been there, got that t-shirt. You know, I understand this idea of middle level management stall. Okay. So, and somebody liked that line because I just heard somebody laugh. So the bottom line was that might be an issue, that there may be an issue with somebody from a theological standpoint saying, we can't have touch. We can't have contact with ET because it's going to be inviting the devil into our lives. And
I can see
was that viewpoint.
Okay. Yeah.
I can see that religion it's huge,
Powerful.
you know, and people, you know,
Yeah, it's
people,
powerful.
if you're faithful, you're faithful. Then nothing is going to sway you, you know, but I mean, I know now that some of different countries are opening up again. England was thinking of opening up its research department again, depending on what the U.S. had to say. France has always been pretty open about it. I mean, they're just like carte blanche. They see something, they disclose it. China's starting.
Do you know in France it's a misdemeanor to file a false report?
Oh, really? Right.
What do
Yeah.
they classify
There
as
you go.
false? When they get there and they don't see it, it's false, so you get charged?
Yeah,
No,
that's pretty
if
fine line.
somebody comes here and does a field investigation on it and feels that it's baloney, you could be charged with a misdemeanor for filing a false report.
That's terrible because you could have seen something and then it's gone, and then somebody comes to check it out
But
and they don't see it.
let me give you an example.
Oh.
When I've interviewed people who have had a serious
Mhm.
sighting and have never had one before.
Right.
I've interviewed combat veterans, and
Mhm.
they start breaking out into a sweat. You can see that they're living it again in their eyes when you're talking
Yeah.
about some event. Well,
Mhm.
people who have genuine sighting events, you see that with them. They start really getting fidgety. If the person just sits there and kind of, oh yeah, this big thing came down, and it landed on the basketball court, real casual like that. Nah.
Yeah, but maybe some people I've seen enough of it through my life. I'm really relaxed about it. I'm like,
But
You'd
not
be
your-
very
but-
casual
but-
speaking
but
about
not your
it.
first one.
Something else is flipping
No.
around.
But not your first one.
No,
Not
the
that
first
first one.
actually, you know what? The first one, well, I'm sure I've seen them much younger, but the one I recall the most, I was probably about 18. I was 19 because I remember coming back home from socializing, and I just saw it. I watched it for half an hour, just going down off the horizon to where I knew there was a large lake. I went to bed. It was 2:00 in the freaking morning. I wake up, my parents are outside and there's army helicopters swarming everywhere. All I remember saying was, oh yeah. was
By the
this
way,
thing.
that was there
It was
earlier.
this thing. I guess it must have been really a thing, like I didn't think much about it beyond that because it didn't freak me out. It didn't, like my mother actually worked at one of the universities up north and worked with NASA and the astronauts. She was in contact every day with the astronauts on the moon landing. It's like this sort of stuff that was talk in the house. It was just like, meh. Now if it landed on my freaking front yard, I might have been a little bit
That's
more uptight
probably
about
why.
it. But
For me, I'd like
Yeah.
seriously, I'd lose it.
yeah, see, but it's just because from a young age,
I've
it was
never
just
seen one.
her
I'd
and my
love
dad
to.
would talk about it, and my sisters and I would be like, whatever, like we weren't taught that, oh, this is a scary thing, not a bad thing, it's not a good thing. We were indifferent because we didn't know. For me, seeing this experience was just like, whoa, I'm going to bed. It's like,
I had occasionally when I was writing my column, I wrote it for 7 years.
right.
Until the paper went under, and every now and then I'd get an invitation to like a backyard barbecue. Now I would show up, and I'd bring a security guy with me to make sure it wasn't a lynch mob, and and next thing you know, I'd end up with a burger and a beer in my hand, and I'd let the security guy go, and they say, "Hey, we want to meet our Uncle Ralph who saw Foo Fighters in World War II, or our Aunt Sally, or whatever." In one particular family reunion, this was a family reunion. The matriarch sat me down. First thing, she sat me down and started going through a family album, and there were like tintypes. And
Oh, wow.
She's
That's really
flipping
old.
through this family album, and
Yeah.
she says, "Our family has been touched by them for at least 4 generations, if not 5."
Mhm.
Wow.
Okay, and she started pointing at past relatives, and she said, "There's at least 2 out here, and I'm going to have you sit down and talk to them."
Very
Which I
nice.
did. Now, I never published an article about them per se because it was done in confidence. But but it grossly educated me. And when I did
Mhm.
write about the fact that this one family had this kind of stuff going on for 5, maybe 4 to 5 generations, I got mail from other families.
Hmm.
So this
Oh.
stuff led
Like
to
a
a
chain
line.
effect.
It put a line in one of my articles and said, people are handing these stories down. We may not have been told to report them or the government's not interested, but families are handing these things down like family heirlooms.
Yeah, it's
Something
like oral
special
history.
happened to Uncle so-and-so back when,
Right. Right. But that's fascinating. That's where that's where it all comes from. Can you imagine, like, even the indigenous people, like going way back, and they're just out in the fresh air at night. I know growing up north, for me, there wasn't any glow from the city lights. I was, near the lake and the mountains, and the sky was crisp and just
Black.
crisp, so clear. You could see everything, and it's like you could see things just zinging around really quick, way up high. And, this was before all the satellites. Yes, I'm aging myself and I don't want to talk about it. Just right. So pre-age of satellites. So when we actually saw something, chances are we were really seeing something.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, I don't know. It's a spectacular thing. I don't like all the fear mongering that goes with it. And, and we don't know about all the different species that are out there. Maybe that's something we could talk about on another show. Which species do we think drive which specific crafts? And, if there's any stories associated with it, I don't know, because I think people are very curious about it. Grays seem to be the most common that people seem to see, or the humanoids, or, yeah. Meh, again, indifferent. Right. So I don't know. I think it is fascinating. I think if you've never seen one yet, you're gonna be pretty blown away. But I don't know.
No,
for me,
you see all these pictures on the internet, about the different shapes, the different species.
Yes.
People have done artwork. Have you ever noticed that when they show the reptilians, they always show them looking like they've had foul, they've had a bad day, and they're muscular as hell, things like this.
Yeah, they've been to the gym.
Yeah, but the sketches I get from people who have had interaction with the reptilians, charcoal sketches, very gentle, very enlightened beings.
our producer says the same thing.
What is the agenda of making them look like they're big, nasty people who are going to bite your head off, let alone these people who are got a little hood on and there are a reptilian version of our own features, and
reptilian or draconians, like they're big.
Well, I refer to them as Dracs, but the thing is everything I've heard about them and everybody I've ever talked to, and I've probably talked to a lot.
That is actually fascinating to hear.
And they're gentle, they're enlightened, right. They're trying to help us. Okay. And they've got no major thing. We've got a whole bunch of them. Now, are they hidden? Yeah, they are. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. One particular species has this glamour ability. Okay. You think you're looking at a normal person. Mm. Okay. And if that person is standing in the supermarket line, the lady behind that person, kid, 4 or 5-year-old kid, is sitting in the basket and saying, "Mom, look, a dinosaur."
Right.
Okay. And looking at the guy, the guy has to kind of look back, a guy or gal, has to look back and say, "Oh, you got a cute little hatchling, kid, it's that kind of thing, and it's more common than you think. Okay. Right. And when I told one radio show, I says, "Hey, they walk among us, hon. There's a whole bunch of aliens out there that walk among us. Some are glamour, some are like the Palladians, they look like us, they look like Swedes, So
are there a race out there that we need to worry about?
Okay. I heard a story a couple of years ago from some researchers.
Michelle, humans.
Aside from the obvious.
Well, yeah.
Human race.
It's not wrong.
I worry about our country thinking about we've been at war for almost 70 years, right? Someplace. Okay. Right, yeah. And that bothers me as a Buddhist. That bothers me tremendously. Okay. As a taxpayer, it bothers me even more.
Right.
But is there a race up there? From everything I'm seeing and everything I talk to other, what I'm going to call learned Buddhists. Mm-hmm. Okay. The general sense in the galaxy is peace and love. We're all one mind. We're oneness.
Collective.
collective. We're oneness. We're all part of the same
The law of
stuff.
one.
We just, yeah, we
Right.
just, we've all got the same thing going on inside. And it's only the facade of this human existence that lets us say, oh, they're going to eat us or they're going to destroy us, And I see these science fiction movies and I get very upset with them, like the Battle of LA. They're showing all, the aliens coming down with their laser rifles or whatever, and our Marines fighting them off and everything like that. Look, if we end up having a war with them, it'll be over in 90 seconds.
Do you think they war with themselves?
Perhaps, but I think they've evolved past it, and they look at us like I said earlier, the tribe with a bunch of matches, this warlike tribe with a bunch of matches, and I think they see us destroying our planet, and they want to get us squared away.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Last question for tonight. Is that okay with you, Cheryl? Thank you, Cheryl. So Joseph asks one more question. How many races do you believe that are here, Cheryl?
Okay. Excuse me. I'm a statistician. I add up the UFOs.
If you had to guess, an educated guess.
But okay, as a journalist, I got this book called The Blue Planet Project. Okay. And they suggest that we've had as many as 60 species races visit our planet. There's about 7 to 11 that visit us regularly. Okay, from this aspect of the government of the galaxy, our sector, they say it's upwards of 110, 120 spacefaring races in the entire Milky Way galaxy. But I don't know who wrote that, and we don't know if it's true. Okay,
Yeah.
Right. Paul Hellyer, our Canadian former defense minister, actually had made several comments. I think he's brilliant, and he believes that there are several, like I think even more than that. I thought he mentioned at one point like 100 and some different species. I was like mind blown, but I like how a lot of people, let's just say retired people in certain positions in the military and the government are coming forward now. Even
Because
astronauts
they can.
coming forward and saying, bam, 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 bam. This is what we saw. They're whistleblowing, maybe.
Deathbed we saw a couple of years ago some deathbed confessions from former CIA guys and things like that. So there's something to all of this. It's just we would like the straight story on it, but remember the hook here though. Right. Okay, this is like a husband coming to his wife and saying, "I've been having an affair with someone. I apologize." Okay, and the wife says, "What else have you been lying to me about?" Right. But we already know the government lies to their teeth
exactly.
anyway.
Yeah. It's on a need to know basis, and apparently we don't need to know. So
apparently neither does your president. But
So with that being said, we are nearing the end of the show. So please promote yourself. How can everyone find you? Promote your books. What you got?
Actually, the best place. The hackers took my website apart. Okay. Fuckers. So yeah. So basically,
give me their names. I'll get them.
Remember, I used to be a Wicca priestess. That's been dealt with,
Okay, I'm glad to hear it because I adore you.
This is our this is the pink book, the UFO sightings desk reference. Okay, the best place to get this, go to Amazon. It's the only place you can buy it. Amazon.com. Go to books. Look for Cheryl Costa. Cheryl with a C, Costa with a C. Okay, look up that. You'll see 3 books there. There'll be a white book like this and this pink book. This is the one you want. And this is lots of numbers, charts, graphs, and tables. If you want one with the stories like my column, there's one up there called the UFO Beat, and that was all 238 columns that I published from 2013 to 2019. Those are the best 2 books out there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Have me back in the future. We'll just go down the rabbit hole and talk paranormal.
I can't wait.
I'm going to be in touch with you because we do book pretty far in advance, and I'll be in touch with you in the next day or so, and we will book you again.
And give Linda our best. I hope she's feeling better, and I hope you guys have a great 4th of July.
If you ever have her on separately, Okay. You will get a very different interview because she comes at it from a very different perspective.
We could do that too.
And she's a librarian, and librarians are swore not to censor. And she has a very bad attitude about all this stuff being hidden.
I love it.
Very
and you know
cool.
what? If she's willing, when she's
And she
feeling
shoots
better,
from the hip with 2 machine guns. She really,
I like it.
from a standpoint, she's really, really quite radical in that sense. So
Hey,
she
if
was
she's
originally a
willing, we'll do
hippie.
it.
She really was.
I love
We'll-
it. My
We'll have
brothers
you
were.
on like back to back, like one night and then the next night, just to make it that much more
Yeah.
fun. So
You've been such a
So-
joy. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you, Cheryl.
See you.
Get better.
Have a wonderful Canada Day.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
happy 4th.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well, everyone, we have come to the end of another fantastic segment here on the Outer Realm. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you to our very special guest, Cheryl Costa, and our producer, Joe Montaldo, who, of course, mans the fort behind the scenes for us. Huge thank you to Folgers for sponsoring tonight's show in full. Thank you, Folgers. Please remember to stop by our YouTube channels, International Public Radio, UFO, Paranormal Radio, and subscribe. Head on over to the Outer Realm on Facebook and Instagram. Love us up, please. If you'd like to see a specific guest or topic on the show or would like to appear yourself, please email us at theouterrealmcontact@gmail.com. Again, theouterrealmcontact@gmail.com. Also, please don't forget the Podcast Awards, which is People Choice Awards for us. Head on over podcastawards.com. Find us, The Outer Realm, under the social category. Kindly cast a vote for us. We love you for it. And don't forget our peers, writers, and illustrators of the future podcast under education, storyteller, and drama category. The Centralist with Joe Montaldo, news category. Chasing Prophecy, Spiritual and Religion. Science and Beyond with Joe Montaldo. That would be under the science category. Now, don't forget, tune in next week as we welcome 2 more amazing guests. Wednesday, we welcome back Dr. Rita Louise to the show. She will be discussing empaths and narcissists. That should be fun. Thursday night welcomes Elliot
Story of
Van
my life.
Dusen. Elliot Van Dusen back to the show, and he will be catching up on his research within the paranormal field. So, to all of you, especially in the United States, have a fantastic 4th of July. If you're traveling, please travel safely. We want to see you all back here next week. And to the rest of the world, thank you. Have a wonderful, safe weekend as well. And good night.